Let's testify tonight. Oh God, you've done so much for me. I'm grateful and overwhelmed here at your feet. And I could stay here forever, Lord. But you call me to something more. And I hear you say that you have a plan to use every broken woman and man to display just how good you are. We are your living pieces of art. What good does it do to hide away when all of my scars are a picture of grace? All right. So I will testify of the power of God. I will tell the world of the hope I have found. You, Lord. For my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Oh, do you believe it? Has he done it for anyone else? I said, has he done it for anyone else? Cause the God that I serve, he's always at work. Has he done it for anyone else? So come on and testify of the power of God. Come on and tell the world of the hope we have found. For our bondage was broken, our hearts were made whole, and that's too good to keep to yourself. Come on and testify of the power of God. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. I'm gonna testify. Somebody testify your voice. This is my. So I'm gonna testify. Somebody testify. Come on, take it up. Jesus, my champion, the victor of grace, the only one worthy of all of my praise. Yeah. So come on and testify. Oh, somebody lift him high. Come on, testify of the power of God. I will tell the world of the hope I have found. Oh, for my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Sing it. Oh, my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself.
Good afternoon, evening, morning, whatever it may be. I was just realizing that I probably still have that. Where is that silly thing? That's that. Okay, why am I not? Oh, because I'm sitting there like an idiot, looking in the wrong program. All right, get rid of that guy. Not necessary for this stream. And I heard something, but I don't know what that was, which is weird. But anyway, so today we are going to start a brand new series And so we just finished Genesis, and now we're going to be moving into Exodus, the second book of the Old Testament, and also the second of what's called the books of Moses, because the authorship of these first five books, also known as, and Stan says the noise was a new subscriber. Oh, okay. Well, thank you, whoever. But you see, usually it pops up on the screen. That's the weird thing, but I didn't see it. Did you see it? Because I didn't see it. And so if you're the new subscriber, thank you. Anyway, so okay, so I guess you did see it because you got a name, Jorge. Well, thank you, Jorge. Welcome. So it's probably because I was messing around getting rid of the little salty guy while I was talking. Anyway, so Exodus, written by Moses. Some people doubt Moses' authorship as far as whether or not he actually wrote it or if he wrote all of it. And a big reason for that is the simple fact that it actually contains Moses' death in the story. And so if Moses died, how did he write after he died? And so two basic answers that I've gotten on this. One is that, and honestly, the one that makes the most sense to me is that at the time that Moses died, Joshua finished writing the book. So basically, the last couple of chapters maybe were written by Joshua. Or I don't remember exactly when Moses dies in Exodus, but from that point to the end was written by Joshua. The other is that Moses, being a prophet of God, simply wrote the events that would come to pass. But I tend to think that the Joshua thing is probably the answer. We'll never really know, and at least not in this life. However, the interesting thing is, Moses is probably the single greatest prophet in the entirety of the Bible. He spoke to God like no other, and so this is it's actually very interesting when we get into his conversations that he has with God. Now, this first chapter is very, very basic. This first chapter is just basically a bridge between Genesis and Exodus. And so, for those of you that weren't here last week, at the end of Genesis, we had the death of Jacob, aka Israel, and the fact that he was buried in his homeland of Canaan by his 12 sons, who then returned to Egypt, where they were living during the famine that was going on at the time. And of course, one of the brothers, Joseph, was actually the number two guy in all of Egypt because of various circumstances, and God had been watching out for him. And Tiffany has a prayer request. Says, fell on my left ankle, ripped the tendons, ouch, ligaments, and chain. I'm not sure what you mean by change bone and cyst. It is the third, and let's see, ligaments and change bone. It is the 3rd of March. It's very scary. I'm assuming so. You have some kind of you're having a surgical procedure on the 3rd of March. Is that what I'm getting out of that? And if so, Tiffany, be sure to remind me when we get closer to that date that when your surgery is coming up. I will tell you, honestly, I've had, oh my gosh, like 8 surgeries in my life, and the all of them within about the last 12 years, and in fact, probably 5 or 6 of them just within the last 3 years. But I will say this is that the actual, if you've never been in surgery, yeah, it can be nerve wracking when you're coming up on something like that. However, um, one thing to and it took me a while, but honestly, um, oh, gotcha. And so yes, you're going in for surgery. They're going to change, move the bone to the right place, whole left side of ankle. That yeah, that's so. The surgery itself, look, you are going to breeze through it. I promise. And you don't think you're going to. You're freaking out. You're nervous and all that. But here's basically what happens. You go to the hospital. The surgeon comes in, goes over with you the procedure because they have to legally, just make sure that you give your consent that they're going to cut you open, they're going to move this around, they're going to sew this together, and then they're going to sew you back up. Then you will get a visit from the anesthesiologist, who is, I believe, the anesthesiologist is the most well-paid person in the operating room, if I remember correctly. And frequently the anesthesiologist will be accompanied by their head nurse, and they will explain to you how anesthesia works, and that you make sure that you have somebody there to drive you home because once you've had anesthesia, you're not good to drive for at least a day. And then after that, you'll probably have nurses checking your vitals and hooking you up to an IV and all that good stuff. And then when it's time for the actual surgery, you lie on your back on a little cart, and they roll you into the operating room. That's where you start to feel nervous. The funny thing is that the truth is the only thing I noticed about the operating room is it's a little chilly in but they're very carefully regulate the temperatures in them, and there's a lot of bright lights in your face, because obviously they want to have the area extremely well lit, so that they can see what they're doing. And then the anesthesiologist or their nurse will eventually, once they've gotten you in correct position for the surgery, will basically put a mask over your face. And now, depending on the hospital you go to, if it happens to be a religious hospital, which unfortunately I'm becoming fewer and further in between, but my last surgery was at a Catholic hospital, and it was very nice that the nurse actually said a prayer with me. The anesthesiologist nurse said a prayer with me as they were knocking me out, basically. So, but either they may be talking to you, they may tell you to count backwards from 10 to 1. If they tell you to count backwards, you will not get to 1. You'll be like 10, 9, 8. Then the next thing you know, you're in the recovery room, and with whoever's going to drive you home is probably sitting there waiting for you to wake up. And then after you wake up, the doctors come in, make sure you're feeling okay, and then they'll wheel you out. That's honestly the entire process from your perspective. But from the time that they put the mask on to the time you're into the recovery room, you will not sense any passage of time whatsoever. It's like you close your eyes, and then you open your eyes and you're in the recovery room. It's the weirdest thing, and it's honestly because the anesthesia is actually a form of, it's like an induced coma, and so your brain function goes down to bare minimum. Unlike, it's not like sleep. You don't dream, and you don't have the feeling of that you've been asleep for any amount of time. You just close your eyes and then open them up again, and it's hours later. However, I will say this, man, best naps I've ever had in my life were all surgeries, because after you're groggy, of course, when you first start to come out of it, but once the anesthesia wears off, it's like, wow, that was a great nap. Wish I could have some of that every day. So I'll say this to you. So obviously, we'll be praying for, obviously healing on your ankle and everything, but I also, and for the hands of the surgeon, is very important. Pray that the the surgeon is competent and is able to do their job well. And sorry, now the guys in my small group are texting for some reason. And as I'm saying this, I'm adding you to the prayer list that I have here. Uh, and remind me, Trustin, at our small group to bring up Tiffany if you can. And let's see. So, having surgery March 3rd to all right. All right. So yeah, it's actually not that bad of an experience, even though it's very nerve wracking before you go in. But I'm just saying that to encourage you that look, let's say absolute worst case scenario that you die during surgery, right? That's the worst thing that could possibly happen. And I know, hey, you're getting your ankle operated on. What are the odds? Probably pretty low. Even if the doctor was completely incompetent, the odds of you dying in an ankle related surgery are pretty low. However, they always warn you it can always happen. Weird thing, sometimes people have a heart attack during the surgery or whatever. It's rare, but it can happen. So, but it would be the best way to go because you will not suffer at all. You you'll close your eyes, and then the next thing you know, you will be, with God. So it's honestly, if I had to choose a method of death, death during anesthesia would be my number one pick. But the other thing is, like, sometimes people freak out about they've heard horror stories about people waking up during surgery, and that does happen sometimes. However, and in fact, it happened to my dad at one point. But here's the interesting thing about that: because of the nature of anesthesia, while that can happen, you won't know it. Basically, what happens is, that, of course, if you start to wake up, they turn up the anesthesia so that you are immediately knocked back out, and when you will not have any memory of it just because of the nature of how it works. So so honestly, the worst thing about it is the anxiety leading up to it. That is the honest truth. That is the worst thing about it. The pain is hard because the surgeon hates pain meds. Yeah, and that's an ongoing problem these days. Honestly, that for some reason I meant to light my candle today and I forgot to. But yeah, doctors, particularly surgeons, it seems like, are extremely averse to pain meds. And a lot of that is just fear of legal action from the government. Because, how many times do you hear about the opioid crisis in this country? Which honestly is, you know, and I've talked to nurses and doctors about this, and every time I have, they've agreed with me. The problem isn't, I mean, obviously the problem is people do take the drugs, but the problem isn't that doctors should not be able to prescribe it. The problem is doctors that prescribe it for recreational use, and those doctors should absolutely lose their license. And so but these are controlled substances, and I know we talk about fentanyl, we talk about oxycodone and stuff. But the majority of people, I know, people, they're bringing it over in truckloads over the border. Truth is, most people get these drugs through prescriptions. And if doctors, there are doctors out there that will basically sell prescriptions, and that should not happen. Yes, Dan, I did forget the strip naked and put on the funky gown. Although ankle surgery, you probably won't have to strip naked. In fact, if you're wearing shorts, you probably just have to take off your shoes and socks. Because it does depend on where the surgery is. He did explain the ligaments, but in medical terms, I have no clue what he said. Yeah, that doctors will do that, and he'll probably and what he'll do is he'll say the exact same thing on the day of the surgery. And Alex says, in Moses' time, some wine is the best you could hope for anesthesia. Um, no, they actually had hard liquor back then, so you could do a little better than wine. And they did have opioids. They just didn't have them in the forms we have now. They had they didn't have refined chemical opioids like we do today. But keep in mind that most narcotics are derived from various plants, and people have known about the narcotic benefits of various plants for a very long time. It's just that in the modern age, we basically ban, yeah, exactly, Stan, talking about milk of the poppy. So I don't know what Egyptian medicine was like in comparison with other cultures, but I'm sure they had something. And milk of the poppy is what they did on Game of Thrones. Okay, I only watched the first season of Game of Thrones and I completely gave up on it because it made me so mad. So anyway, so chapter 1 of Exodus picks up basically it kind of summarizes the very end of chapter 50 of Genesis, and then continues on to kind of set up for what the situation is now. And so this basically is, if you will, kind of the prologue to Genesis, where it's basically you know how there's the like if you saw Avengers Endgame, the 5 years later screen. This is the 400 years later screen. So this is like right up to that point. So let me get that share. All right, there we go. So chapter 1, second book of the Bible, the book of Moses, Exodus. These are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob. Each came with his family: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. The total number of Jacob's descendants was 70. Joseph was already in Egypt. So this much, obviously, you already do. That Israel's 12 sons. I think they're all total. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, plus Joseph is 12. Yeah. So Jacob's 12 sons were in Egypt along with their families, and the total at that point was 70 people, which I think it actually says that at the end of Genesis as well. Then Joseph and all his brothers of that and all that generation died. So obviously we're skipping ahead very quickly now. So we basically, from the point that they settled that Israel died and they got back to Goshen. Remember, that's the town they were living in. Their lives were fairly uneventful, right? So we just skip ahead to Joseph and all his brothers of that generation died. But the Israelites were fruitful, increased rapidly, multiplied, and became extremely numerous, so that the land was filled with them. Yeah, Israelites, they were getting busy. So the 12 tribes of Israel were growing exponentially. And if you think about it, if you have a lot of kids, it does not. And keep in mind that Jacob had 12, right? And by the time that we got to the people settling into Goshen, there's 70. Now that actually makes about sense because if each of the 12 had 12 themselves, it would be somewhere around that number, right? Now it's 70 total, it says. So let's assume that there were 35 total, right? So if there were 35, that's half of the 70, right? And all of them had 12 kids. Now we're up to 420, right? So, and this is just assuming they all had 12 sons. I'm sure they had daughters as well. But now they all had 12. And so by the third generation, we're up to 5,040. Another 12, so this would be the fourth, did I say fourth generation? Now it's 60,480, right? So in 4 generations, we could have the population of a decent sized town. And let's go to what's the sixth generation here. So we'll go another 12. Now we're up to 725,000 people. You have a major city. That's like the size of Nashville, Tennessee. That so you're talking. It doesn't take that if you're multiplying at that rate, and keep in mind God was blessing the nation of Israel, so He's protecting them probably from a lot of childhood ailments and stuff like that. You know, People think, oh, how could they possibly multiply so quickly in 400 years? Well, I only did 6 generations, right? So if we do the math on that, 400 divided by 6, that's 1 generation every 66 years. And honestly, most of the time we consider a generation about 20 to 30 years. So that's being extraordinarily conservative to say there could have been a million of them, right? So just putting that out there, because I know a lot of people tend to they just tend to dismiss the idea that the Israelites became so numerous so quickly. But notice it does say they were getting busy. The Israelites, and I know this sounds silly, but keep in mind that the whole of the law at this point was be fruitful and multiply. That was really the only commandment from God at this point. And so those that believed in the God of Abraham believed that it was their duty to have as many children as possible. All right, so moving on. A new king who had not known Joseph came to power in Egypt. He said to his people, "Look, the Israelite people are more numerous and powerful than we are." So at this point, the Israelites are beginning to outnumber the Egyptians. Let us deal shrewdly with them, otherwise they will multiply further, and if war breaks out, they may join our enemies, fight against us, and leave the country. So the Egyptians assigned taskmasters over the Israelites to oppress them with forced labor. So notice this is sounding, we've talked about slavery in the Bible, but this is not talking about the kind of slavery that we've talked about in most verses in the Bible. This is more along the lines of the slavery of of the old South in the United States. The Egyptians were basically abusing the Israelites. They built Pithom and Ramesses as cities for Pharaoh. But the more they oppressed them, the more they multiplied and spread. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites. They worked the Israelites ruthlessly and made their lives bitter with difficult labor in brick and mortar and all kinds of field work. They ruthlessly imposed all this work on them. So this is obviously getting, the Israelites are being, viciously treated by the Egyptians at this point, because the Egyptians are simply afraid that that the Israelites are going to rebel against them So the best way to keep that in check is to oppress the people, to literally keep them down. Then the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah, when you help the Hebrew women give birth, observe them as they deliver. If the child is a son, kill him. But if it's a daughter, she may live. The Hebrew midwives, however, feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt had told them. They let the boys live. So his first thought was to have, midwives was basically like an OBGYN today, right? These were the people that were in charge of, taking care of the mom when she was delivering a baby. And so basically, he ordered all the midwives to kill any boys that were born and keep the girls. Honestly, I think that was a mistake. And I'm just saying tactically, because if you think about the way that people reproduce, one man could impregnate 100 women. So I would, if I were Pharaoh, I'd be thinking the other way around. If it's a girl, kill them. If it's a boy, let them live. Plus, the boys make good, strong laborers. Now he might be afraid that if there's too many men, they would be too strong and they could overpower them. But it seems like if you're worried about them increasing in number, you want to cut back on the number of women. So, so the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, "Why have you done this and let the boys live?" The midwives said to Pharaoh, "The Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before a midwife can get to them." I love that. It's who says that there's nothing spicy in the Bible. So the Hebrew women vigorously give birth so quickly that the midwives can't get to it. Now, of course, this was a lie, and they were just trying to cover their own tracks. But I don't know. I see the that's just funny to me. So God was good to the midwives, and the people multiplied and became very numerous. Since the midwives feared God, he gave them families. Pharaoh then commanded to all his people, "You must throw every son born to the Hebrews into the Nile, but let every daughter live." And that's where obviously we're in chapter 2. I'm sure we'll get to the baby in the basket story, but the so Pharaoh issued an edict saying that all the boys get thrown into the river to die, and they'll let the girls live, and so that would very quickly reduce the population. I mean, that's brutal, but effective. And you'll notice that a lot of the things we see in Exodus are actually eerily similar to some of the things we see in the Gospels. So, for example, when it comes to Christ, Herod did something very similar to what Pharaoh did, where Herod ordered that every male under the age of 2 be put to the sword in order to try and prevent the Messiah. But the problem you run into is that if God has a plan and God is determined to have that plan come to fruition, you ain't going to be able to stop it. That's just a fact. You can either cooperate with God or you can oppose him and lose. Those are your choices. So there you go. There is chapter 1 of Exodus. I'm actually really, it's funny. The wife and I watched the first half of the Ten Commandments, the Charlton Heston film, last night, right up to the intermission. And it's so funny to see him. I've only seen one movie in theaters that had an intermission. That was Gandhi. But Uh, if you watch the Ten Commandments, the Charlton Heston film, it's a great film. I'm not going to say it's a bad movie, and I may actually review it on this channel since it's a biblical film. But it is so inaccurate. Um, there are so many things wrong with it, much of which is done just for the sake of storytelling. They added a whole romance plot to it. They added all sorts of melodramatic things to Moses' story. But honestly, I don't think that was necessary. I think because they also cut out vital parts of the story of Exodus. As a big example, Moses' brother Aaron, who we will get to know in the coming weeks, Aaron is a incredibly vital part of the story. Aaron is Moses's right hand. Moses, we don't know and this is one of those things. When we get to the burning bush, we'll see where he talks about it. But we don't know exactly what it was. But we do know that Moses appeared to have some kind of possible speech impediment. Maybe he stuttered. Maybe he just was too shy to speak in front of a crowd. We don't know. We only know that he objected to being chosen by God because he couldn't speak. He was not eloquent of voice, I believe, is the way that it's phrased. But the and so Aaron became the mouthpiece. Moses never said, "Let my people go" to Pharaoh. Aaron did. So Moses just sat there and whispered to Aaron, "Say, tell him this," and then Aaron would say it. So it's actually, I think it would be an interesting movie to do it accurately, because most people don't know that. Because unfortunately, most people know of Exodus through movies like the Ten Commandments and the Prince of Egypt, where they don't know jack about it from what the Bible actually says. And even like now, this first part, honestly, there's not a lot to object to when you compare it to the Ten Commandments. Although in the Ten Commandments, Pharaoh basically had his troops just storm the city and stab all the boys instead of throwing them into the Nile. But that's trivial as far as differences there. And there was nothing about the midwives. There was no ordering the midwives to kill all the men, or all the boys. I mean, so and also there was no mention of how incredibly vigorous the Jews were and how they reproduced like rabbits. So there's definitely some stuff they left out, which I can understand. The movie was made back in the 1950s, so you weren't going to get real graphic about sexual conduct, but there were some things in that movie like implied forced sexual encounters and stuff. And so you a clever writer could definitely write it in without being too graphic about it. But unfortunately, we've never had a truly good and accurate Moses movie. Would love to see it happen. All right, so we'll see if anybody has anything to say, and then we'll move on. So Trustin says, "I think I'm up to 7 or 8 major surgeries. I'm living the dream." Yeah, I joked like last time I was there. I was like, now how, because I've had surgery in my knee, couple surgeries in my abdomen, surgery in my throat, surgery. Um, just now I'm trying to remember where they all were. Surgery on my back. Uh, and so I asked him, so, when do I get the punch card for the free surgery? Because, I think I've earned it. Stanley says, blood diamond kind of slavery. Well, I've never, I know the term, but I don't know that much about the diamond trade of, I assume you're talking about South Africa. But, but in a sense, like during apartheid, remember, the interesting thing is that in some ways it really did mirror the Egyptians, because the white South Africans that were the oppressors at the time were vastly outnumbered by the black population. And Stan Lee says, in a row. Not sure why. And yes, the mother's just squeezing them out. That's, oh man. It almost reminds me of Monty Python, The Meaning of Life, when the Catholic mother has the baby, because she's just sitting there doing the dishes, and the baby just kind of drops it, and then she looks down. There's a baby on the floor, and she goes, "Oh, will you get that, please?" And yeah. Pharaoh made the opposite mistake of China's one-child policy. Yeah, and China is paying the price for it now because yeah, they are struggling with their population levels. Does it also have an overture? The Ten Commandments. Yes, it does. The movie doesn't like I own the movie on a digital streaming copy of it, and yeah, the movie doesn't start for like 8+ minutes, between the overture and the opening credits. Yeah, do they have a card they can punch? That's what I want to know. I only know it from the Leonardo DiCaprio movie. Lots of digging in the dirt. Yeah, I don't know much about it as far as, and I've never seen the Leonardo DiCaprio movie, so I can't speak to that. So I have no idea if that movie was even accurate at any level. And that's honestly, it's just becoming a big problem in that, you know, more and more and more in our society, we are getting all our information from pop culture. And I'm not, I mean, if you were with me on Sunday, I went on something of tirade about people getting their news from like YouTube vloggers and stuff, and that's obviously a problem. But then you also have people that get their history from biopics, right? So they might know something about JFK because they saw the movie JFK. But it's a movie, it's a drama, and obviously, great artistic license was taken to make for a compelling story. I haven't even seen that one, but almost every movie that is about real events or a real person takes massive artistic liberty. And so we should never take a movie, a biopic, or a history movie as being any kind of substitute for studying the actual historical documents that we have available. But unfortunately, we also don't. We're in our school system where it seems like we're more interested in teaching gender identity than history. So yeah. And yes, there is the song for anybody that wants to know. That song is a classic. At the end of Genesis, Egypt and the tribes of Israel are good friends. It gives good perspective on what you can really depend on and what you can't. Yeah, and well, and notice this shows, like at the beginning, obviously when there were 70 Israelites, the Egyptians were happy to have them living in Goshen. But now the city of Goshen is all Israelites basically. Which, by the way, I will give the Ten Commandments partial credit here in that the city of the Jews was called Goshen in the movie. But so the Israelites are easily millions strong at this point, and so and in fact, like if we were talking about. If we go back to our little calculator, so if we go, so we start with the 35 times 12. That's one. Let's see. So that's, we'll say 20 years times 12. That's 40 years times 12. That's 60 years times 12. That's 80 years times 12. That's 100 years. So you got one, two, three. So we'll do times 12 times 12 times 12 times. So if they just had 12 sons every generation for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 generations. That'd be 200 years worth. It gives me an exponential number because it's too big for the calculator to display. So it's completely conceivable that the Jews outnumbered the Egyptians. Things and people can change. That is 100% true. Sounds like a similar situation to what people are complaining is happening in places like the UK. I can't speak for the UK, but yeah, a lot of times what happens in the United States right now, there is a growing anti-immigrant fervor in this country, and I'm not saying racist. I'm just saying anti-immigrant, and I think it's because people, for one thing, fear that and I've heard arguments being made for the anti-immigrant stance, which mostly it's usually about culture, right? That if people move into your country and they don't assimilate to your culture, then your country's culture shifts to their culture. And so your country is basically slowly taken over by whoever's moving in. I can understand that fear, and that is a legitimate concern to have. However, it's also not a reason to not allow any immigration. But we do need to control it. I'm all for securing the borders and all that, but I'm also all for a very, very expedited immigration policy. But I also think that immigrants to this country, and this is true, many countries already do this. Immigrants to this country should be required to learn English. We should not be providing services in 750 languages. That's a wasted government expenditure. And immigrants should be, basically they need to acclimate to our society. We don't need to change our society to acclimate to them. And I think that can be done. And if we do that, I think it would be less problematic than what we're seeing. And think about this: all the Jews were living in Goshen. So, and we see this in American cities today, where we'll have sections of the city that are exclusively one ethnicity. So you might have in Portland, Oregon. There's this in this one part of I think it's the Northeast that's mostly Vietnamese people, right? And then you go to another part of North Portland, and it's mostly black people. And then you go to another part of Portland, you might get mostly Chinese people. That'd be like in the Northwest. I can't remember the exact name for that area now. But and so you have, like New York is well known for areas like Little Italy and stuff like that, where it breaks down even within European ethnicities, right? And the funny thing is, like, if you go to a place like Little Italy in New York, right? And New York is a very interesting city when it comes to our country. Then, yes, the Italian culture is very prominent, as opposed to if you go to random town and somebody happens to be Italian, most of the time you wouldn't know it, right? You just say, oh, they're white, right? Because they've completely assimilated. But in parts of the country where people of one ethnicity congregate, that ethnic culture tends to be preserved. And that can be both a good and a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. Because in fact, look at Canada. They have an entire province, that they don't even consider themselves a part of Canada. I'm talking about Quebec, of course. And in Quebec, the primary language is French, right? And so when you, and that's kind of like, if you think about it, so Quebec has its own unique culture that is different than the rest of Canada, which can be cool if you want to learn that culture and meet those people and stuff, and that can be really neat. But it also creates division. Most people that I've talked to from Quebec fiercely defend the idea that Quebec is not part of Canada. that Quebec is its own nation, and they're being currently basically occupied by Canada, if you will. So and so I can see, like, if you have a singular population that's an ethnic minority, but it's growing and growing and growing, and in fact, it's growing very quickly, and it gets to a point where they become the majority, a lot of people are going to freak out, right? And in fact, when you look at the people that are generally white supremacists, what is one of their number one arguments? That, oh, by whatever year, whites are going to be the minority in this country. That's something that they say. And so, yes, history absolutely repeats itself. That is the same kind of rhetoric that the Egyptians were spouting, thousands of years ago. Yeah, being a house slave doesn't ensure you have privilege once you get a new master. That is true. Kind of a weird way to put it. The immigrants are reproducing quickly and taking over the country. Yep, yeah, kind of what I was just saying. Yeah, love Monty Python. Whatever happened to old comedy? Well, it got old. You know. I was thinking about the self-defense skit when Idris Elba was suggesting they sell kitchen knives with points without points on them. I have not seen that. Gorillas in the house says can only be here for a few minutes. Cub Scouts parent meeting tonight. All right, well, I hope the little rascals do well. And what if they have a pointy stick? No! Today you are going to learn to defend yourself against a man with a banana. Yeah. I think most people don't have time or attention span to sit down and read a book or haven't learned of history lecture podcasts. Well, I don't. First of all, history lecture podcast. I don't know if that's a specific podcast that you're talking about, but podcast, no, absolutely not. I'm sorry, because literally anybody could start a podcast tomorrow. If I wanted to do Salty's accurate history, I could start that tomorrow, and then I could start telling people how the Egyptians actually made the pyramids out of marshmallows, but over time they got super duper stale, and that's why they look like they're made out of rock today, right? And so anybody can, and I'm exaggerating there, but the problem is that when we're not looking for good verifiable sources for our history, then we're doomed to repeat it, as we are seeing right now. Careful not to accidentally sign any transition documents. Not sure. Oh, for the Cub Scouts thing. Whatever. Did they actually change the law where the child immigrants born in America is not automatically an American citizen? I know that Trump wants to do. I don't know if he actually did the executive order on that. Let me see. Did Trump change? Let's see. So it looks like there's some lawsuits about it. So obviously it hasn't gone through as of yet. Okay. 19. Let me see if I can find something that just has. Yeah, federal judge on Thursday temporarily blocked Donald Trump's executive order restricting birthright citizenship to babies born on U.S. soil. The order is one of several efforts by the administration to block migrants' entry and residents of the country, blah, 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 blah. Now, I'm not interested in opinion. I want to know what it actually says. Let's see. So, birthright citizenship was first established in 1868 by the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the. Yeah, so this is where Trump is where he's working at, and this I did hear people argue about. So the 14th Amendment that actually guaranteed, because Trump can't get rid of the 14th Amendment with an executive order. Just he can't. No president can. But With the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, so this is the highest law of the land that cannot be revoked without a constitutional amendment, which will not happen. It says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So that's the 14th Amendment. And for the longest time, people have basically taken that to mean that if you're born in this country, you are a citizen of this country. What Trump's argument is, and I do think this should go to the Supreme Court because it does need some clarification. Even though, because honestly, I'm kind of with Trump on this one. Because the way that the 14th Amendment is written, notice it says all persons born or naturalized in the United States, comma, and, not or, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Now, what that would indicate is that basically you're born from citizens, born of people that are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. If you're not a U.S. citizen, you're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. So the argument is that, for example, when you have, and this does unfortunately happen on the southern border, particularly, where pregnant women who are in labor will crawl across the border, and when the Border Patrol grabs them, because they don't even hide from the Border Patrol, right? The Border Patrol will come and arrest them. But what happens is, well, they're in labor. And so by U.S. law, they have to be taken to a hospital and the baby must be delivered. Well, guess what that means? The baby is now born in the United States and therefore a citizen. And so the idea of birthright citizenship, based on Trump's argument with his executive order, is that that would only be the case if she was in fact legally in this country. And so, and like I said, I actually support him on this for a couple of reasons. One, I don't like the idea of people basically trying to manipulate the law just to try and do that kind of thing. But number two, I don't like the idea of women crawling on their bellies across the border to try and have a U.S. citizen baby. And if basically it doesn't matter if your baby's born in the United States, if you're not legally here, then that practice will quickly come to an end. All right, so, and that's about as political as I want to get tonight. Darth Maul says, Last Temptation of Christ, totally biblically accurate, no creative liberties at all. You're lucky I'm not looking at this on YouTube, or I would have banned you for that one. Or if it's still, if you're born in American soil, then yeah. So currently, it's if you're born in American soil, then you're an American. But of course, I already explained all that. Alex says, reminds me of putting one seed on a chessboard and doubling it every time for all remaining 63 space. Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's a logarithmic scale, and so that's why some people get very concerned about population, because it would be very, very easy to quickly overpopulate the planet, but just stopping having babies means that the population becomes drastically low. So it's kind of a catch-22 there. Ideally, like every family should have like 2 kids, right? Alex says in the courts now Trump wants to change Constitution, doesn't have the votes yet. No, he doesn't want to change the Constitution. He's just trying to reinterpret it. He can't change. He's never going to get the votes to do look. We have not had a constitutional amendment in a long time, and we're not gonna in our lifetimes. Because I think a lot of people don't understand just how hard it is to pass a constitutional amendment. Because first, you have to get 3/5 of the Senate and the House to vote for it. That's 3/5. That's a supermajority in both houses, which Trump doesn't have, and is extreme. The last time there was a 3/5 majority in both houses was when the New Deal happened. All right, so it's very unlikely. So even if, by some miracle, the Democrats decide to vote with him on a constitutional amendment, well, then it has to be ratified by 3/5 of the state's houses. That ain't going to happen. Oh, sure, you'll get the South. maybe a good number of the Midwest, but you're not going to get 3/5. So I do not believe for one minute that it's going to happen. And by the way, it's even worse if the Democrats try to pass one because, the majority of the number of states are, in fact, Republican, which means that there is absolutely no way the Democrats could ever pass a constitutional amendment. And so we are at a post constitutional amendment society. My grandfather taught all his grandkids the exponential lesson. You earn $100 an hour, 1 penny today, and two tomorrow, and double it every day. Yeah. And Sulu even said that in Where No Man Has Gone Before. Doesn't take long to add up way over $100. That is true. We haven't had a referendum in a while now. Well, yeah, a national referendum. I don't even know when was the last. I mean, because obviously we vote for the president every 4 years, but other than that, I don't know. Is the last. All right, history and initiative referendums in the United States. Uh, yeah, well, let's see. Populist progressive eras. Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's ever been a national referendum. Just looking at the what information I can find real quick. Um, yeah, but some states like Oregon has half a dozen of them every year, and it gets really tiring, which is part of the reason Oregon's such a mess. Power of exponents. It's the power of math, people. Um, but the last one was frighteningly close vote. You're right. You're right, Alex. 2/3. Did I say three? I said 3/5. 2/3. Which actually, let's see. Um, I always get my fractions mixed up. I don't know which is bigger. No Democrat right now. I mean, look, I'm just going to be real here. There is a state of war between the two major political parties in the United States. It is extremely unlikely that any Democrat is going to vote for anything that Trump wants. Now, the Democrats are in the minority in both houses. So, Trump, if Trump's smart, he'll ramrod everything he can through right now before the midterms. Because here's part of the problem is now I know that both Mexico and Canada are in negotiations with the president about these tariffs. But of course, I don't think that there's any talk of negotiations with China on the tariffs. And if prices do in fact continue to go up for the first 2 years of Trump's administration, I would say that the likelihood of the Republicans maintaining the majority in both houses would be slim. Um, I assume if at least one parent is American, then the kid would have to be a citizen. I think specifically the mother would have to be legally in the country, based on Trump's argument. Um, so that's the big question. Will will it pass the court system now is the real question. If it does, it will significantly change immigration policy. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. Just both parents aren't naturalized or official or whatever. Yeah, so basically, that you have to be. Notice the way that the 14th Amendment is phrased, it's under the jurisdiction of the United States. It doesn't say U.S. citizen, under the jurisdiction. However, so that means that anybody that is here legally. And yes, Alex already talked about the pregnant Mexican girls. Darth Maul said, I get, sometimes Alex, honestly, I think that you just watch the live stream muted and you just talk to people in the chat. That's why you never answer me. I had a couple of homes get busted not long from. I had a couple of homes get busted not long from where I live in California, with every room filled with Chinese women pregnant. It clearly abuses the law, even the spirit of it. Well, yeah, obviously. Trust says birth rate in the Western world is way too low. Good birth rate is around 2.1 children per couple. Most Western countries below 1.6. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, and the reason I say two, yeah, I know 2.1 is to account for childhood death, basically, because if each generation is two per, first of all, we need to reestablish the nuclear family, which unfortunately the leftist type people don't want to do. But we need to reestablish the nuclear family as being the standard, and then each family should have two kids. And if that's the case, then our population would remain stable. I was talking about the California referendum when Quebec voted on whether they wanted to leave. Oh, the Canadian referendum when Quebec voted on whether they wanted to leave. I don't think. Yeah. Sorry. I don't know when the. I don't follow Canadian politics because they bore me. 1970 was when direct vote of senators can happen. Governors used to appoint senators. Governors didn't appoint senators in the 1970s, though. I I don't think that. I don't know. Maybe in some states, but I'm pretty sure senators were elected before the 1970s. All right. Let's see. That was the 17th Amendment of the Constitution, which was passed in 1913, not 1970. So, just to get your history updated there. So, you had all the digits right, but the zero needs to be a one and swapped with the seven. 14th Amendment has been abused pretty bad. Agreed. Let's see. It was in 1995, and the result was 49.42 to 50.58. Crazy close. Well, honestly, right now, I'll bet you that if you had a referendum in California, Oregon, or Washington on seceding from the United States, it would be very close. It just depends on the dominant political feelings of people in that area, and the power of the propaganda that is used to encourage or discourage them. And yeah, which is unfortunate. And ABJ says yellow. I assume you mean hello, like you're saying yellow. Yeah, 49.42% of Quebec citizens voted to leave Canada. Yeah. Mike Richards, best thing to come out of Columbus, Ohio, is here. Good to see you, Mike, which means we'll be able to wrap up the live stream soon. Let's see. You're lucky Ottawa allowed it to happen. Spain won't let Catalina alone. Have one. You saw what happened when Russia provinces tried to leave Ukraine. Yeah, I know you're a big fan of Putin, but whatever. I'm not getting into that. Canada is a victim of lame duck prime ministers. Who cares more about politics? Who cares more about politics than economics? I mean, look, honestly, I think that it'll be interesting to see what. I mean, if you want to get technical about it, Trump's a lame duck, but Trump is using that to his advantage. He is signing massive amounts of executive orders, which I know some people are cheering him on, other people are horrified by. And I got to admit, well, I don't disagree with everything, like I said, with the 14th Amendment thing. I'm definitely on Trump's side on that one. But I also really don't like the idea of rule by executive order. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Trump is the first president to pass a lot of executive orders. Obviously, he's not. He's probably the first president to sign this many executive orders in his first week. But he's you know it seems like he's genuinely trying to enact as much policy as possible uh, through the executive order process, and I'm not comfortable with that. There's a Senate and a House for a reason. And I understand that the Senate and the House tend to go very slowly, painfully slowly sometimes. And that is a problem with our political parties being unwilling to act. They don't have debate, they have soundbite contests. They're not interested in solving the problems. They're just interested in garnering more votes and continuing their power and all that. And goes for both parties. This isn't just one or the other. And and the worst thing is we keep reelecting them. Over and over and over. We cheer them on because we'll watch some soundbite of our favorite politician owning some other person that they have at some special council on whatever. And I'm sure there's a million videos, or more than a million videos on YouTube, where you can find, pick your favorite politician, and you can find 1,000 videos of them absolutely destroying somebody, and another 1,000 videos of them absolutely being destroyed by somebody. So it's just the game of sound bites. Politicians do not care about you and me. And the problem is, people think they do. People still think, well, if just we elect one more Democrat. After all these centuries of life, history gets. After all these centuries of life, history gets blended. All right. Well, gee, Salty, I love you too. Time to leave, indeed. Well, I only say that because every time you come in, it's like right when I'm getting ready to wrap up the show. Alex says Biden spammed the executive orders as well when he started. Not to this extent. I mean, every president has some executive orders that they put in on day one. Usually some, I can't remember what it is. There's like this one thing that keeps going back and forth. Like every Republican either shuts it down or enacts it, and then the Democrats do the opposite, and it goes back and forth every single time. And that's the stupid thing about executive orders. They are band-aids at best, because anything that can be done by executive order can be undone by executive order. As we saw when Trump, one of the first executive orders Trump signed was to renege 78 of Biden's executive orders. And so, if, for example, let's say 4 years from now, we elect a Democrat, and so the Democrat sits there, and on their first day, oh, let's just wipe out everything Donald Trump did. And the problem is, since so much of Trump's agenda seems to be centered around these executive orders, that could make a serious difference. And we don't need the entire economic system of the United States shifting back and forth every few years. That is insanity. Our economy is already teetered on a razor's edge. And quite frankly, I don't know if it can truly be saved at this point. But if it can be saved, it's certainly not going to be saved if we have these idiots behaving like 5-year-olds, constantly going back and forth on various rules. That's why we have a Senate. That's why we have a House. These things are supposed to be difficult to get through. UK not letting Scotland leave. If I remember correctly, I don't think the Scottish referendum passed. Yeah, so you got to be careful about how you phrase things. But let me double check. Let's see. Yeah, the referendum in 2014, 55% voted against the proposal for Scotland to become an independent country, and 45 voted in favor. So compared to the Quebec thing, not even close. So it's not a matter of the UK allowing them to leave. It wasn't even close. It was a 10% margin. The difference in this case that our current PM can't get any bills passed anymore and is due to being kicked out by a party primary any day now and won't negotiate with Trump because, well, according now, I don't know how accurate this is, but I had my inside source actually just Mr. Know It All. We were talking about this very topic just before this live stream, but he said Canada has just caved. They're now ready. They're now willing and ready to negotiate, and will be securing the border while we do it. And so, uh, you know, at least according to Mr. Know It All, Canada is negotiating. Mike says, or, oh, just a coincidence indeed. Yeah. Yeah, I've been thinking that presidential term should be longer than 4 years. Just isn't enough time to implement a plan, let alone find out if it works. Well, I'm mixed on that. I'll tell you, because on the one hand, I kind of agree with you. Like, even senators get a 6 year term. I would not be but okay, so I would say this. So, number one, I would probably say that the presidential term should be closer to 8, maybe even 10 years. However, I would also reenact a very old policy where the vice president was not voted for as the running mate of the president. The vice president was the person who got the second highest number of votes. So the president would be forced to work with their opposition. And I would also put a and it's something that would have to be worked out, but we'd need to have some kind of competency test for anyone who wanted to run for president to make sure that a doctor would certify that they're going to be good for 10 years. Obviously things can happen, but could you imagine if and not trying to be mean to the man, but imagine if Joe Biden had a 10-year term. He wouldn't even be halfway through it right now. So so on the one hand, I agree the presidential term should be longer, but I do think competency should be a factor. And in fact, I would even go so far as to say that the president should have an annual competency test. Creep says Biden 162 executive orders, Trump 200 plus, and counting FDR 3,700. Yeah, and the thing is, FDR, uh, you know, some people would consider a great president. Some people would consider probably the reason the economy is collapsing right now. Scotland wants to do another one. Court blocked it. Well, here's a problem, and this is something that happens in some states too. Let's say you hold a referendum on doesn't matter issue X, and it doesn't pass. So then what do? Well, you go out there and you petition and you beg and you bar and you bribe and you do everything you can. Then you try to get that referendum back on the board every single year until it passes. And I honestly think, and granted, every state has the right to set up their laws, and every country, by the way, has the right to set up their laws the way they feel. But I'm all for a no double jeopardy on referendums. Heard Mexico, well, Mexico caved first, yes. Um, and I will say that. So I genuinely believe, and like I've said before, people think Trump is stupid. I do not think Trump is stupid. Um, I think that and I actually said this to Mr. Know It All before this latest news about Canada. I genuinely believe that the tariffs, at least the tariffs with Mexico and Canada, were absolutely just a attempt to set up a negotiation to get what he wants from them. Because as Mr. Know It All pointed out when we were discussing it, they need us more than we need them. Because while it's true that if we put tariffs on Canadian goods and Mexican goods, prices in the United States will go up. That also means demand for their products will go down. And we don't, and they can say we're going to put tariffs on your stuff, but we don't sell that much stuff to them, which is another problem with this country. We don't produce jack. Americans are fat, lazy, and spoiled, to be honest. Everybody wants to be a TikTok influencer. Nobody actually wants to get their hands dirty and work. And that's why I think this country is frankly doomed. I think it's like Rome just before the fall. Not going to lie. We are hedonistic, and we are lazy. We basically think that the rest of the world should be providing us with whatever we want, and they should be thanking us for it. So now the one thing we do produce better than anybody else is military power, and I think that's the only reason we've been able to sustain ourselves as long as we have. But I do think that Trump intentionally just used these tariffs to get Mexico and Canada to sit down and talk and give him what he wants as far as help on the borders and maybe some changes in their trade policies, whatever it may be. And it may well work. But this is something that me and Mr. Know-it-all disagree on, but I totally respect his position even if I don't agree with it. I do not believe that the ends justify the means here. I think that what President Trump did was kind of messed up because, I mean, look at what happened on Wall Street today. How much money was lost today because of these tariffs, right? In addition, how many people have been stressing out for the last 48 hours because they barely live paycheck to paycheck? And so if the cost of groceries goes up 30-40%, they're screwed. You know, like I pointed out to him, look, it's one thing if you have a good job, you're middle class, uh, and these tariffs cause your grocery bill to go up. Okay, maybe you won't be able to take a vacation this year, or maybe you'll have to put in a little bit of overtime to make up the difference, right? However, what about people? And not try to throw a pity party on myself or anything, but I just think about my situation. What about people on a fixed income? People on Social Security, people that are disabled. So what do they do if all of a sudden the price of groceries goes up? Because I can guarantee you that doesn't even make sense, but I can guarantee you that Social Security isn't going to suddenly give me a bump just because the tariffs caused the prices to go up, and that's something that, in my opinion, is unacceptable. We should not be, taking our weakest citizens and making it worse for them. However, I also understand the need to deal with some of these situations, right? I absolutely, especially as far as the Mexican border, I actually agree with Trump that the Mexican government should have done a lot more to help secure the border. And hopefully that will happen with these negotiations. But to jeopardize the entire economy to get them to the negotiating table, I can't agree with that. And ABJ says, "Oh, look, breaking news in the last hour." Yep. They sent like 10,000 troops to the border to help secure it. Okay. The anti-federalists and Confederates later would have one 7-year term. I don't think that it should be a. You know what I would do probably? I would say a 10-year term, and if reelected, they could serve another 5 for a 15-year total possible tenure. However, you know what I would take away from the government is every form of political retirement package, with the exception of former presidents would continue to get a security detail. But I think we spend way too much money on people who are former senators and former congressmen and former presidents. These people are living a golden parachute lifestyle on the taxpayer dime, while their constituents, the people they claim to care so much about, are starving. Senators are serving like 50 years. President gets max. Yeah, I totally, I get what you're saying. I know that, you know, here's the problem. When we start talking about term limits, like right now, obviously at the federal level, only the President of the United States has term limits. And I, you know, I'm really mixed on the concept because if the only reason that Trump doesn't get a third term is because he can't, what is that saying? I don't have a problem with honestly removing all term limits, but I do think the first presidential term should be longer. And just because if the people truly want that person, vote for him. However, if a president's running for their fourth term and they're 95 years old and they don't even remember their own name and you vote for them, you're a fool. But then we're getting exactly what we deserve. And that's the thing. People say, oh, I can't believe we have Biden, right? People voted for him. Some of the people, I can't believe we got Trump. People voted for him. I can't believe we had Obama. People voted for him. So we get the president we deserve. It just occurred to me that our elected government is as corrupt as Mexico's. Yeah, whew. It's funny because it's true. Well, don't you have to take yearly driving tests after a certain age? Well, again, every state does it differently. I'm sure in some states that's a requirement. In other states, it's not. But I'm not opposed to it. I know that people say, "Oh, that's so mean to 80-year-olds," but you know what? They're 80. They got something else to do. And honestly, and I understand some, like there are elderly people that would get offended at the idea that they should have to take a test to prove that they're still competent. But these same people probably would have said, test them 40 years ago. So but in that particular case, no, I do think that the elderly, you know, and you could even do it something like, make it so that a doctor can simply certify that you're competent still. Which I'm fine with. If you go for your annual checkup and the doctor says, "Yep, you're good to drive another year," I don't think it's necessary that they do a full driving test. And if the person turns out to be incapable of driving because of some physical limitation, then that's on the doctor. So there should be a test for a leader of the free world. I agree. The perfect president would be an actual teddy bear. Nothing would get done, and we would have freedom. That makes no sense whatsoever, Alex. Trustin's taking off. Have a good one, buddy. 80% Canadian exports is to the U.S., so any tariff is paying. Yeah. Tariffs on Canada would hurt them. Would hurt them hard. Same with Mexico, and so they definitely want to come to and I think that's why. Like when keep in mind, another thing I looked up while I was talking to Mr. Know It All about it. The highest rate of tariffs in the world right now, and do keep in mind that we are that in Trump was talking about 25% tariffs on pretty much everything, right? Except for like gas, I think, from Canada. But 25% tariffs is what Trump was talking about, right? Highest tariffs, the highest tariffing company or country in the world right now is the Bahamas, and their tariffs are 18.56%. And again, I know that Trump is he's being a shrewd businessman. I know that, some people, good friends of mine like Mr. Know It All, believe that, hey, what he's doing, it worked and therefore it's good, right? And I can understand that. I can respect it. I just disagree with it. I do not think that, especially if you're going to call yourself a conservative, but then you're going to try to throw massive tariffs at people to control the economy, that's the opposite of a conservative. Of course, then again, I've said for years that Trump is actually a liberal. The problem is people confuse conservative and liberal with pro-life and pro-choice. And Stan Lee saying toga for some reason. Um, Movies entertainment used to be the U.S. Big U.S. export, and even American movies and TV are starting to suck. 50 million people have been very stressed in the last week. Yeah, I would say that's probably true. In fact, I'll tell you, just driving people around in Uber, I mean, almost everyone I've talked to in my car for the last 48 hours has been extraordinarily stressed out about it. I'm sure they're feeling better now, or at least I hope so. But yeah, it's been throwing a lot of undue stress on a lot of people. If interest rates go up a few points, they can no longer afford the mortgage. Yeah, if you have a variable, I'm so glad we have a fixed rate mortgage and we got it when interest rates were relatively low. But yeah, if you have a variable rate mortgage and the interest rates skyrocket, that can completely screw you. ABJ says it's nice to have Ron Paul always around to keep that voice the same. If you say so. I think Ron Paul's a nut. Remember, The Watchmen, and in that reality, Nixon got rid of term limits and was running his for fifth term, not that far removed from the possibility if Watergate succeeded, for example. Um, well, also in The Watchmen, Nixon was evil, so yeah, there's that. I don't have an opinion about Ron Paul, except I know he's not generic party line. Well, the problem is, we have our random outliers out there, right? Like back in the day, John McCain, he didn't just go with the Republicans all the time, right? But what we need is for the parties to stop behaving like childish dicks and sit down at the table and talk, you know? Darth Maul says, change of subject. Did you watch Section 31? Well, you obviously haven't been to my other channel. I'm currently 3 videos in on a review for it, and I'm probably going to have to do at least 10 more videos to get that review done. Which I apologize, there will not be a video out tonight. I wanted to, but I've been working at the advice of Mr. Know It All. I've been working on a way to make it so that the little salty avatar bounces when I talk. So that it looks a little more animated because he said he hates just staring at the still image. And so I'll show you a quick sample. If let's see if we go to share video. Excuse me. Let's see. No. Uh, so this is just a little quick video. It's kind of funny because when you hear the dialogue, you'll see what's funny. It's only 25 seconds long, but it's just a little test of what I was learning how to do today for editing purposes. Hey guys, and by guys I mean no one because this is not a public video. This is me, obviously, testing the ability to make me move when I talk. So today I thought I would talk about nothing because, that's what's in Mr. Know-It-All's brain. Nothing. Get it? So there it is. Now that again is a rough one, but I'm going to try to refine the movement a little bit, but just to make it so that it looks a little more alive. Did they? I don't think at least in the movie, I don't think they explain it. They just, it's just like, yeah, it's the '80s and Nixon's still president. But Kurdistan put tariffs at 100% on Kuroga. No, Thomas, you misunderstood. We actually we took 100% of the cost of goods that were imported from Kuroga and donated that to to a organization that rescued orphans from Kuroga. I wasn't stressed out. Just plant another pear tree and buy more eggs from friends. Well, I'm glad life is so simple for you, Alex, that you can just plant a pear tree and have pears tomorrow. Last time I checked, that doesn't work quite that way, but, whatever. And I don't have friends to buy eggs from. Yeah, that's crazy. USA can get a fixed mortgage for entire duration. Canada, you usually have to renew every 5 years. Yeah, back when Jason was co-hosting on the other show with me, he explained the whole Canadian mortgage thing. That is crazy to me. Oh my gosh. For those of you that are Americans that don't know this, if you're in Canada, you only get a 5-year mortgage, and then in 5 years you have to renegotiate. So if interest rates go up, there is no such thing as a fixed rate loan, at least not beyond 5 years. So you are screwed if interest rates go up. Yeah, that's crazy. Let's see. And is that Stardate video compilation word? Yes. The center part is it's bracketed by some new content when I talk about how it works in conjunction with Discovery, Strange New Worlds, and Section 31. But yes, there were two prior videos, and I do say it in the video. If you listen to me, I said, and now here's me from the past, because I said this was something I did before. Stanley says it's a creepy avatar. Thomas says, yes, Stan, I was a little confused at first. Oh, as far as the video, sorry. Make the lips move, says Chris. You guys just can't be satisfied. I'm trying to improve things little by little. First of all, I can't make the lips automatically sync to my voice. All the movement that you saw in that video with the thing just bouncing, and because remember, I don't have an editor, I don't have a production staff. I do 100% of everything, and I'm trying to drive Uber whenever I can to help feed my family, right? So I have, there's no way I can hand animate all that motion and stuff. So what I did was basically I created this whole thing so that it listens to the audio track of me talking, and then there's a effect called camera shake, and then I have it tied so that the amount of camera shake is directly tied to the volume of the audio from my voice track, and that creates that effect, and it worked pretty well. However, making lip sync work, I would need to have some much better tools at my disposal, which I do not have. Like I believe the Adobe Creative Cloud has some tools that can do lip sync automatically and stuff, but I don't have money for that. You know. Cinnabon has button quail that lays a lot of eggs. Sure, the eggs are tiny. Yeah, I don't think that would work. Seems crazier the bank would guarantee an interest rate for 25 years. Well, you see, that's why, and I don't know how the loans work in Canada, but generally speaking, you can get a lower interest rate if you take a variable rate loan. And ours have gone from like 2.5% to 6 in 10 years. Yeah. Let's see. Can you do one of those? I think they're called VTuber avatars. I don't know. I've never heard that term before. What is a, let's see, VTuber avatar? VTuber is a digital representation of a person or character that's animated and controlled by a real person. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. So, how to get a VTuber avatar? Number one, commission an artist. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Number two, or you buy a pre-made avatar, create your own, and then you got to get the software. Let's see. VTuber Maker, software on Steam that allows you to create your own model. VUP Studio, free software that allows you to create 2D or 3D anime style avatars. Yeah, I've never heard of this. But here's the problem: if I was going to use the salty thing that the salt vampire thing that LDG created, I don't have the technical know-how to create that from scratch in a 3D program, especially a program I've never even used. But and then I would have to because the the problem that I think I would run into is that I have to be careful about how much work it adds to what I'm doing. Like right now, what I do is I can record my audio with what I have set up right now. I can record my audio. I then have to convert the audio to the proper file format. Then I apply the effects to the Salt Vampire, and I'm done. Captain Phantom Nerd with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, buddy. Have
Just a
not
gift.
have not talked to you in a while, but thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. And what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so it's basically plug and play. So I create I record the audio, I apply that to the Salt Vampire, and I'm done. With something like this, I would have to record the audio, bring it into their software, render that out, then take that render, bring it into my editor, and then start applying the other stuff to it, which unfortunately wouldn't. I mean, I'd have to look at the software, but unless the software creates an alpha channel, I wouldn't be able to put stuff like behind my avatar like I frequently do. So I don't know if that's doable or not. I'll look into it, but yeah. They're animation tools, but they would not work on. Yeah, that's another problem. Yeah, because the character I use has such a weird looking face. We talked about like me and Mr. Know-It-All were talking about could basically take and modify the image a little bit by changing the there's basically two mouths on this thing. Let me turn them back on. So if you look at them, that's the wrong one. There we go. There. So if we that way, so you'll notice that there's the big circular suction cuppy kind of mouth, and then inside of that is like a smaller mouth with the messed up teeth. And so what we're talking about is what we could try to do is to remove the inner mouth with the messed up teeth and replace that with like a generic mouth that we could lip sync. That might be doable eventually, but I'd probably have to get better software than what I'm using. Let's see. And that's just something. So Justin Trudeau posted on Twitter. It looks like just a very shortly ago. Just had a good call with President. This is from Justin Trudeau. Just had a good call with President Trump. Canada is implementing our $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing the border with new choppers, technology, and personnel, enhanced coordination with our American partners, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl. Nearly 10,000 frontline personnel are and will be working on protecting the border. In addition, Canada is making new commitments to appoint a fentanyl czar. We will list cartels as terrorists, ensure 24/7 eyes on the border, launch a Canada US joint strike force to combat organized crime, fentanyl, and money laundering. I have also signed new intelligence directive on organized crime and fentanyl, and we will be backing it with 200 million. Proposed tariffs will be paused for at least 30 days while we work together. There you go. So Trump has paused the tariffs as Canada basically kisses our butts. Take that for what it is. They have avatars where the mouth moves even when they talk during live streams. Yeah, those are like plugins on Twitch. I don't know that. I've seen some of that stuff. The problem is, it's trying to get it to work on this avatar would be the problem. Is Insect out of the art commissioning biz? For now, yeah. Unfortunately, he he kind of got burnt out. Do you have any head? Oh, that's on the Darth Maul. A lot of anonymous YouTubers use those when they don't want to show their own face. Yeah, I can understand that. They do have real time rendering. You see it a lot of Twitch live streams. Yes, but with Twitch, you have to understand Twitch is a very different platform than YouTube. So what you see on Twitch is not something that you can just record. Generally speaking, it's not something you can just record and then use. And then even then, like for example, there are phone, like things like what Snapchat, right, where you can put things on your over your face and it'll animate in real time. But then you'd have to record it with your phone, transfer that recording to your editing software. But since you don't have what's called an alpha channel is transparency. An alpha channel is the reason that I can have the salt vampire over here or wherever, and you can see me even though he's there because the while the picture is square, you're only seeing the part that he's on. That's called an alpha channel. Typically, you find those in PNG type images, and it's more difficult to get a video that will export with an alpha channel. It can be done, but most little things for like Twitch and stuff aren't going to do that. Like they'll do it in real time, but they will not do it like as a recording, so that I could then take that video footage and apply it to something else. It's headcanon about Nixon. Don't really care. Let's see. I think we have lived through a full political realignment, such as during FDR, New Deal, or the crazy '60s. Republicans are now the populist party, and the Democrats are quasi-conservatives. I think there's some truth to that. Because the funny thing though is that part of me still thinks that Donald Trump is just trying to destroy the Republican Party. I still that and if so he'll be extremely successful at it. Um, let's see. Didn't realize that much stuff was coming in from Canada. Let's see. Getting Trudeau to step down was one of Trump's goals. Revenge for what he did against the anti-vax truckers. You know what? I agree with Trudeau on the anti-vax truckers. I know you like are one of those anti-vaxxers, but I think people that are anti-vax, uh, you know, they're complete hypocrites because almost all of the anti-vaxxers were cheering on the vaccine when Trump was president, and then all of a sudden Biden becomes president when it's distributed, and it's the worst thing ever made. And by the way, the Democrats did the same thing because the Democrats were all anti vax until Biden won. And then they became pro trump. It was a political issue, not a practical health issue. And that pisses me off. Fentanyl Commission. This is so overdue. Canada's been following the California model of non drug control. Yeah. Let's see. Talking about Nixon and China and stuff. Um, let's see. Did YouTube copy Twitch's streaming concept? Not really, because YouTube streaming and Twitch streaming are two very different animals. And Twitch, I don't know if they've changed. I mean, I haven't been on Twitch in a couple of years, but Twitch is pretty much exclusively a streaming site, where YouTube is still primarily edited content. Streamers are not the norm on YouTube, and so streaming is just something you can do on YouTube, but it's not the reason. Like, in fact, nowadays, what people go to YouTube for is shorts, which I can't stand. See, the stores in Canada take out American-made alcohol made no sense since the stores already bought them. Yeah, the alcohol thing I thought was kind of funny. They were also like I remember the dude from I think Ontario was canceling the province's contract with Starlink. But yeah, I never cheered on the vaccine for a second. Not under anyone. Trump was misguided. I don't think. You know what? I don't think it's misguided to try to develop a vaccine, and the vaccine actually worked. And I know, people. You have the paranoid conspiracy theorists, like people that think that there's tracking devices in it. You have people think that everybody that takes the vaccine just drops dead, which is clearly not true. But you know, whatever. It is what it is. It's just a freaking vaccine, and and by the way, I know Trump said that he was going to like if anybody that was discharged from the military because they refused to take the vaccine, that they could come back with back pay. That's just wrong. because soldiers who did their duty, uh, uh, basically get nothing, and soldiers that refuse to do their duty get rewarded. Anti-vax Canada wasn't about getting the vax getting made; it was about forcing it on people and shutting down businesses. Well, every country shut down businesses, and quite frankly, almost every country was the countries that could force the vaccine, the countries that couldn't highly recommended it. Like in the United States, they couldn't force the citizens to take the vaccine. However, it was considered extremely highly recommended, right? And I just get tired of the anti-vax talk. So can we please drop that subject? I'm not interested in rehashing a whole discussion that basically where people just want to argue uh, out of complete ignorance. You know, the shorts are a copy of TikTok. That is true. And the reason that YouTube did the shorts was because they were losing a huge amount of market share to TikTok. Some people were planning on switching from Florida orange juice to Canadian cranberry juice. Yeah. And exactly, Thomas. The vaccine, which was in development for decades. Oh my gosh, it was so rushed. Whatever. And that's the thing. Like, I actually talked to my orthopedic surgeon at the time. His dad was actually one of the people that helped develop the Moderna vaccine. And he went, we talked about it for some time as far as the whole process, how it worked, and the reason that it hadn't been released sooner. The reason it hadn't been released sooner was not because they were afraid it was going to make people grow extra arms or drop dead or anything like that. It was because the vaccine was only like something like 95% effective. And 95% effective is not considered, uh, that good when it comes to being a vaccine. They want it to be 99% effective, or whatever the gold standard is. Um, but they were doing everything they could to make it better, and they finally got it to where they found it acceptable before they released it. Um, let's see. Watch Rings of Power yet? Not yet. I haven't had time. And Alex says, "No, I wish I refused the vaccine." Said, "Well, you see, and the thing is, Alex, that is why I'm pissed at Trump over it. Because even though I know you disagreed with taking the vaccine. I get that. And even though I disagree with you on that, uh, I can respect the fact that as a soldier you did your duty and you allowed them to give you the vaccine, even though you didn't want it. And now your fellow soldiers who refused it are going to get back pay for all the time that they weren't soldiering. That's a bunch of crap. I'm sorry. Um, how can you develop something for decades when it appeared in 2019? Only now have there been 5 year studies. It didn't appear in 2019, and that's the thing. This is what a lot of people don't understand. The First of all, COVID was nothing new, right? The reason it was called COVID-19 was because it was a 2019 variant, right? If a new variant came out right now, it'd probably be labeled COVID-25, right? But COVID is simply uh, the coronavirus, which has been around, for forever, and there have been major outbreaks of the coronavirus in the past, which is why they've been working on a vaccine for so long. And that's you know something that people don't understand. Like you ever notice like uh, and this is kind of something interesting. I want you to think about this for a second. You ever wonder how they come out with a flu vaccine every year? I mean, they don't do 5 year studies every year on the flu vaccine, do they? Uh, the the reason is because the influenza is a known quantity. We know what the flu is, but every year it mutates into a slightly different variant, and so every year they come up with a new vaccine that actually combats that variant. And so that's why they say every year, especially people who are immune system compromised, like myself, every year you need to get the flu vaccine because you know you're not, if you're vaccinated for the 2024 variant, but you're not vaccinated for the 2025 variant. Guess what? You can get the 2025 version. And so with coronavirus, that's what the vaccine was for coronavirus, the actual core virus. COVID-19 was just the 2019 variant that is the one that actually got out. And so when that one, and so developing a specific vaccine for the 2019 variant was no more difficult than developing a flu vaccine each year. The problem was that the initial coronavirus vaccine was only like 95% effective, and they wanted it to be 99% effective before they released it as an official as an official vaccine. But you know, and I don't remember exactly what the numbers were, but and I'm trying to see because okay, here we go. So there was a the SARS outbreak, which was in looks like that one was in China. That one was in 2002. You had the MERS outbreak, which was in Saudi Arabia. That was in 2012. And then, of course, we had the COVID 19 outbreak, which also started in China and started in 2019. Those are the three large recent outbreaks of coronavirus. And so they've been working on it since the SARS outbreak. Tom says you have time now. Actually, no, I don't. I need to make dinner, get ready for bed. Um, Got to watch the other half of the Ten Commandments, and I'm on the fast right now. So, looking forward to the Fantastic Four trailer tomorrow morning. We'll see. The teaser for the teaser. Honestly, I was a little disappointed by. Don't get me wrong. I'm so looking forward to the movie. But, they didn't show anything in the teaser except for the rocket ship. And I'm convinced that that whole thing does not take place in the movie. Yes, and I knew 7 a.m. Eastern, yes. We'll expect a review video by 8. Well, you know what? If I'm able to get up early, maybe I will do something. ABJ says, okay, off topic, the Doom phase of the MCU. Doctor Doom is probably going to be introduced in Fantastic Four, and obviously he's going to appear in Doomsday and Secret Wars. Am I looking forward to it? Absolutely. However, I don't think that Robert Downey Jr. is really Doctor Doom. I think he's a variant of Doctor Doom, most likely from the universe that Pedro Pascal's Mr. Fantastic is from. And the this particular variant of Doctor Doom, like in some of the comic book stories, switched bodies with Tony Stark, and that's why he looks like Tony Stark. That way, the real Doctor Doom is still waiting in the wings somewhere, and they can cast anybody. Let's see. We had a joke on the base with 2 cases of Corona. If you hurry to the store, you can pick them up. Okay, yeah, it's hilarious. And yes, COVID is SARS. That's what I'm saying. Coronavirus, it was SARS, MERS, and COVID-19 was actually, yeah, it's basically like a SARS 2. In fact, that's, if you look at the official designation, you have MERS CoV, which is the MERS COVID virus, the SARS CoV, which is the one that came out in 2002. That's the first one. And then the current one, what we call COVID-19, is actually SARS CoV 2. That's the official designation of it. Bed, it's only 7 p.m. for you. Well, yeah, but I got to watch half of the 10 Commandments and eat dinner. And no, it's not that I go to bed that early, but I am getting hungry. A peanut farmer who himself likes his nuts busted. No idea what you're talking about. All right, so with that, we're going to wrap it up, guys. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to seeing how things go with Exodus. We will do chapter 2 tomorrow. As you could probably see, I already scheduled the live streams in advance because I'm trying to commit to being there right at 5. So hopefully you guys will be there, and we'll be ready to see what kind of craziness happens that has nothing to do with the movie The Ten Commandments.